Hello, I am Mike.
Hello, I am Lily. Welcome to English Podcast Flow. Today's episode is called Stop Overthinking. Start talking because we know a lot of you out there feel nervous when you speak English.
And we want to help you with that.
It can be really frustrating when you have so much to say.
But your thoughts get all jumbled up before they even make it out of your mouth.
So we are going to explore some techniques to overcome that.
It appears that many learners are afraid to speak English because they worry about making mistakes.
Or not knowing the right words.
And they freeze up, feeling like they are under a spotlight.
Being judged for every little imperfection.
Yeah, that fear of judgment can be paralyzing, can't it?
I remember feeling that way when I first started learning a new language.
It felt like everyone was waiting for me to mess up, and it made me so self-conscious.
It appears that this fear is actually quite common,
And stems from a desire to be perfect.
which unfortunately can be a major roadblock to fluency.
It is important to remember that even native English speakers make mistakes.
It's a natural part of language use.
That is so reassuring to hear.
It takes the pressure off a bit, knowing that even those who have spoken English their whole lives still slip up sometimes.
It makes the whole process feel less intimidating, more human.
Exactly.
Studies show that focusing too much on perfection can actually hinder progress.
It's like trying to learn to ride a bike while constantly worrying about falling off.
You'll be so tense and anxious that you'll never find your balance,
Instead, it's better to embrace the wobbles and stumbles.
knowing that they're part of the learning process.
I love that analogy.
It's so true.
When we focus too much on the possibility of making mistakes.
We become paralyzed by fear and forget to enjoy the process.
But how can we shift our mindset from that fear of failure to a more positive, proactive approach to speaking?
One way is to shift the focus from grammatical accuracy to effective communication.
Instead of getting bogged down by complex grammar rules.
Aim for clarity and simplicity.
It's like choosing a scenic route over a highway,
The journey might be a little longer.
but you'll appreciate the view along the way.
That is a really helpful way to think about it.
It's not about achieving some unattainable level of perfection,
It's about getting your message across in a way that people can understand.
and sometimes that means simplifying things a bit, right?
Absolutely.
Studies show that using shorter, clearer sentences can actually make you sound more fluent and confident.
It's like decluttering a room.
When you remove the excess furniture and decorations.
Space feels more open and inviting.
Oh, I love that.
So instead of saying something like, I have been interested in photography since childhood,
You could simply say, I like taking photos.
it's direct, easy to understand, and still conveys the same basic information.
Exactly.
And the more you practice using these simpler constructions,
The more natural they will become.
freeing up your mental energy to focus on the content of your message.
It's like learning a new dance move.
At first, it feels awkward and clunky.
But with repetition, it becomes effortless and graceful.
So we've talked about shifting our focus from perfection to communication.
And embracing simplicity in our sentence structure.
But what about that moment right before we speak?
When our minds go blank and all those carefully crafted sentences vanish into thin air.
It appears that overthinking is the main culprit in those moments.
We get so caught up in analyzing every possible word choice and grammatical structure.
That we create a mental traffic jam, blocking the flow of natural speech.
It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
The more you push, the more stuck it gets.
So how do we break free from that mental gridlock?
And let the words flow more freely
It's like we need to find a way to bypass that overthinking mechanism.
and tap into a more spontaneous mode of expression.
One technique that can be surprisingly effective is to simply speak first and think later.
It might sound counterintuitive.
But by allowing your thoughts to follow your words rather than the other way around.
You can break free from the shackles of overthinking and allow a more natural rhythm to emerge.
It's like jumping into a cold pool.
The initial shock might be jarring.
But once you are in, you start swimming without hesitation.
Wow, that is a really interesting concept.
It feels a bit risky letting go of that control and trusting that the right words will come.
But it makes sense when you think about it.
If we're constantly second-guessing ourselves.
We'll never gain the fluency we desire.
Exactly.
It's about training your brain to trust your instincts and to allow language to flow organically.
Without the need for constant analysis and correction.
It's like learning to play an instrument.
At first, you focus on each individual note.
But as you become more proficient,
You begin to play entire melodies without conscious effort.
so it's about letting go of that inner critic
That voice in our heads that is constantly whispering doubts and insecurities.
and trusting our own ability to communicate effectively.
It's a powerful concept, and I'm excited to explore it further.
It appears that by practicing this technique, we can gradually rewire our brains to become more comfortable with spontaneity.
And as a result, our fluency will naturally improve.
It's like clearing a path through a dense forest.
At first, it requires effort and concentration.
But with each pass, the way becomes clearer and easier to navigate.
That is a fantastic image.
I can almost feel that sense of clarity and momentum building as we practice this technique.
So we've talked about shifting our focus, embracing simplicity, and speaking first and thinking later.
What other strategies can we implement to overcome this overthinking hurdle and boost our confidence in speaking English?
Regular practice is crucial.
Like exercising a muscle,
The more you use it,
the stronger it becomes.
that doesn't have to be anything formal or structured.
Even simple activities like talking to yourself
But you don't.
or repeating sentences from this podcast can make a difference.
It's like learning to juggle.
At first, you drop the balls constantly.
But with consistent practice, you develop coordination and rhythm.
That is so true.
It's all about finding those little pockets of time throughout the day.
To integrate English practice into our lives.
It could be something as simple as narrating your daily activities in English while you are getting ready in the morning.
Or describing the food you are eating while you are cooking dinner.
It appears that even talking to your pet or to a mirror can be helpful.
It might feel silly at first,
But it gets you comfortable with the sounds of the language and allows you to experiment with different words and phrases.
without fear of judgment.
I love that.
There's a certain freedom in talking to a non-judgmental audience.
Whether it is a furry friend or our own reflection.
It takes the pressure off and allows us to focus on the pure joy of playing with language.
But what about interacting with other English speakers?
How can we overcome the fear of making mistakes in real-life conversations?
Joining a conversation group can be a fantastic way to practice your speaking skills.
In a supportive and encouraging environment.
You can find groups online or in your local community.
And they offer a great opportunity to connect with other learners, share experiences, and build confidence.
It's like joining a hiking group.
You might feel a bit nervous at first.
But with each step you take together,
You gain confidence and support from your fellow hikers.
that is a great point.
Having a community of like-minded individuals can make all the difference.
Knowing that you are not alone in your struggles and triumphs can be incredibly motivating and inspiring.
It's like having a cheerleading squad on the sidelines.
Cheering you on as you navigate the ups and downs of language learning.
Exactly.
And by surrounding yourself with people who are also on a language learning journey.
You create a safe space to practice, experiment, and make mistakes without fear of judgment.
It's like being in a cooking class.
You're all learning together, trying new recipes, and sharing tips and tricks along the way.
And the beauty of a conversation group is that you can learn from each other's mistakes and successes.
Creating a collaborative learning environment that is both fun and effective.
It's like having a brainstorming session where everyone contributes their unique perspectives and ideas.
Enriching the overall experience.
It appears that the key is to find a group that aligns with your learning style and goals.
Some groups might focus on specific topics, grammar points, or pronunciation.
While others might be more conversational and social.
The important thing is to find a group where you feel comfortable and supported.
So to recap, we've talked about the importance of shifting our focus from perfection to communication.
Embracing simplicity in our sentence structure.
Speaking first and thinking later.
Practicing regularly.
Finding a conversation group.
And remembering that even native speakers make mistakes.
It's a lot to take in.
But I already feel a sense of hope and excitement bubbling up.
It appears that by implementing these strategies, we can gradually chip away at that wall of fear and overthinking.
Allowing our natural fluency and confidence to shine through.
It's like learning to ride a wave.
At first it feels daunting and unpredictable.
But with practice and patience, you learn to trust your instincts and ride the wave with grace and ease.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
And I think that is a great place to pause for now.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our podcast on Stop Overthinking, Start Talking.
We've explored the root of our fears, debunked some common myths, and discovered some powerful techniques to overcome our mental hurdles.
That's right. We have already talked about the importance of shifting our focus from perfection to communication.
Embracing simplicity in our sentences.
And finding ways to quiet that inner critic that can hold us back.
Now we are going to dive into some common English mistakes that learners often make.
Not to make you feel self-conscious.
But rather to equip you with the knowledge and tools to navigate these tricky areas with grace and ease.
Exactly. It is all about turning those potential stumbling blocks
into stepping stones on our path to fluency.
It's like having a map that highlights the common pitfalls so we can avoid them.
And reach our destination more smoothly.
It appears that one of the most frequent areas of confusion for English learners is verb tenses.
Those little time markers that can make all the difference in conveying the meaning of a sentence.
Oh yes, verb tenses can be tricky.
I remember struggling with them when I first started learning English.
It felt like there were so many different forms to remember, and I often mixed them up.
Creating sentences that sounded a bit like a time traveler's diary.
It's understandable,
The English verb system can be quite complex.
with different forms for past, present, and future actions, as well as different aspects.
To indicate whether an action is ongoing, completed, or repeated.
It's like learning to play a musical instrument with multiple keys and pedals.
It takes practice and coordination to master them all.
So what are some common verb tense mistakes that learners often make, and how can we avoid them?
It's like having a cheat sheet for navigating those grammatical crossroads.
It appears that one common mistake is forgetting to add the S ending to verbs in the present tense.
When talking about a singular subject,
For example, instead of saying, he goes to school,
a learner might say he go to school.
which can sound a bit jarring to a native speaker's ear,
Ah, yes, that S ending can be easy to overlook.
especially when we are focusing on getting our message across quickly.
It's like a tiny but crucial ingredient in a recipe.
Without it, the dish might not taste quite right.
Exactly. It is a small detail that can make big difference in grammatical accuracy.
Another common mistake is confusing the past simple and present perfect tenses.
The past simple is used for actions that happened at a specific time in the past.
While the present perfect is used for actions that started in the past and continue to the present.
Or have a connection to the present.
For example, you might say, I went to Spain last year, using the past simple.
But I have been to Spain 3 times using the present perfect.
Well, that is a good distinction to remember,
I can see how it can be easy to get those two tenses mixed up.
especially since they both refer to past events.
It's like choosing the right tool for the job.
A hammer is great for pounding nails, but not so much for tightening screws.
Exactly. Each verb tense has its own specific function and purpose.
And using them accurately can enhance the clarity and precision of your language.
Another area that often trips up learners is the use of irregular verbs.
Those rebels of the English language that refuse to follow the standard rules of conjugation,
Oh, yes. Irregular verbs are like those quirky friends.
who always have their own unique way of doing things.
You can't predict their behavior based on logic or patterns.
You just have to learn their individual quirks.
It appears that instead of adding ed to form the past tense,
Irregular verbs transform themselves in unpredictable ways,
for example, the verb go becomes went in the past tense.
and the verb eat becomes ate,
It's like they have their own secret code.
that you need to crack in order to understand them,
So how can we tame these irregular verb beasts?
and make them work for us rather than against us.
It's like we need to find a way to decode their secret language.
The key is to memorize them, unfortunately.
There is no magic formula or shortcut.
You simply have to commit these irregular forms to memory.
But don't despair.
There are plenty of resources available to help you.
Including verb lists, flashcards, and online quizzes.
It's like training for a marathon,
It requires discipline and dedication.
but the rewards are well worth the effort.
That's true. And just like with any skill,
The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
it's like learning to dance.
At first, you might step on your partner's toes a few times.
But with persistence and a good sense of humor.
You eventually find your rhythm.
Exactly. Now let's move on to another common area of confusion.
Countable and uncountable nouns,
Countable nouns, as their name suggests, are things that can be counted.
like Apple's books or cars,
Uncountable nouns, on the other hand, are things that cannot be counted.
like water, air, or advice.
Ah, yes, that distinction can be a bit slippery.
I remember trying to count the grains of sand on a beach once.
It was a futile exercise that left me feeling both overwhelmed and slightly sandy.
It appears that the main challenge with countable and uncountable nouns
Lies in choosing the correct determiners and quantifiers to accompany them.
For example, you would use a or an before a singular countable noun.
Some or any before plural countable nouns or uncountable nouns.
And much or many to indicate quantity.
So you'd say an apple, some books, some water, much advice, and many cars.
It's like having different measuring cups for different ingredients.
You wouldn't use a teaspoon to measure out flour for a cake, would you?
Exactly. Each determiner and quantifier has its own specific function.
And using them accurately can make your language sound more natural and sophisticated.
Another common mistake is confusing much and many.
Much is used with uncountable nouns.
while many is used with countable nouns.
For instance, you would say, I have much time.
But I have many books.
It is a small but important distinction that can make a big difference in grammatical accuracy.
Right. It is like choosing the right spice for a dish.
A pinch of salt can enhance the flavor, but too much can overpower it.
And speaking of spices, pronunciations is another area where learners often face challenges,
The English language has a vast array of sounds,
some of which might not exist in a learner's native language.
leading to mispronunciations that can sometimes hinder communication.
It appears that one common pronunciation challenge is distinguishing between vowel sounds.
Such as the short I sound in ship and the long E sound in sheep,
These subtle differences in sound can change the meaning of a word entirely.
leading to potential misunderstandings.
Oh, yes. I remember struggling with that one.
It took me a while to train my ear to hear those nuances.
And to adjust my tongue to produce them accurately.
It's like learning to hit different notes on a piano.
It requires practice and precision to achieve the desired sound.
Exactly. And then there are those tricky consonant clusters,
Like the sound in think and this.
which can be a real tongue twister for learners whose native languages don't have this sound.
Oh, I remember feeling like my tongue was doing gymnastics.
Trying to produce that th sound.
It felt so foreign and unnatural at first.
But with practice and patience, it eventually became more comfortable.
It appears that the key to mastering pronunciation, like any aspect of language learning, is consistent practice and exposure.
Listening to native speakers, paying attention to the way they shape their mouths.
And mimicking their sounds can go a long way in improving your own pronunciation.
It's like learning to paint.
You observe the techniques of master artists
Experiment with different brushstrokes.
and gradually develop your own unique style.
That is a beautiful analogy.
It reminds us that language learning is a creative process.
A journey of discovery and self-expression.
And speaking of self-expression,
Let's move on to another crucial aspect of communication confidence
we've already talked about the importance of quieting that inner critic.
and embracing mistakes as learning opportunities.
But how can we cultivate a deeper sense of confidence when speaking English, even when we are not feeling 100% sure of ourselves?
It appears that confidence, like fluency, is a muscle that can be strengthened with practice and the right mindset.
One helpful technique is to focus on your strengths rather than your weaknesses,
Instead of dwelling on the words you don't know,
or the grammatical structures you have not mastered.
celebrate the progress you have already made and the things you can already express in English.
That is a powerful shift in perspective.
It is so easy to get caught up in what we are lacking.
But by focusing on our strengths, we can boost our self-esteem.
And approach speaking English with a more positive and empowered attitude,
Exactly. It is like choosing to wear clothes that flatter your figure.
rather than focusing on the areas you might want to conceal,
When you feel good about yourself, you project confidence and charisma.
which can make a world of difference in how others perceive you.
Oh, I love that.
It's all about highlighting our best features, both literally and figuratively.
And speaking of highlighting, body language can also play a significant role in projecting confidence.
Standing tall, making eye contact,
And using gestures to emphasize your points can make you appear more confident and engaging.
even if you are feeling nervous inside,
It appears that our nonverbal cues can speak volumes.
often conveying more than our words alone.
When you stand tall, with your shoulders back and your head held high,
You project an aura of self-assurance, even if you are feeling butterflies in your stomach.
it's like walking into a room with a crown on your head.
You might not actually be royalty,
But you carry yourself with the same regal bearing.
commanding respect and attention.
Exactly. And making eye contact with the person you are speaking to,
Demonstrates confidence and engagement.
showing that you are present and interested in the conversation,
It's like extending an invisible handshake.
creating a connection that transcends language.
So we have talked about focusing on our strengths, using body language to our advantage.
And remembering that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process.
But what about that nagging feeling of shyness?
That can sometimes prevent us from speaking up, even when we know the words and grammar.
It appears that shyness is a common human experience.
And it is especially prevalent in language learners.
Who might feel self-conscious about their accent or grammar.
One way to overcome shyness is to practice speaking English in low-pressure situations.
Like talking to yourself reading aloud.
Or having conversations with close friends or family members who are supportive and understanding.
That is a great idea.
It's like warming up before a big game
You start with gentle stretches,
and gradually increase the intensity.
preparing your body and mind for the main event.
Exactly. And as you become more comfortable speaking English in these safe and familiar settings,
You can gradually step outside your comfort zone.
and engage in conversations with people you don't know as well.
It's like learning to swim,
You start in the shallow end, practicing your strokes and building your confidence.
and then gradually venture into deeper waters.
As your skills and comfort level grow,
And remember, progress takes time and effort.
don't expect to become a fluent and confident speaker overnight.
Celebrate each small victory, acknowledge your growth, and be patient with yourself along the way.
That is such an important reminder.
It is a journey, not a race.
And each step we take, no matter how small, brings us closer to our destination.
And speaking of journeys, let's shift gears and explore a fascinating concept.
That can truly transform our relationship with English thinking in English,
Thinking in English can feel like a magical superpower.
unlocking a new level of fluency and spontaneity,
When you can think in the language, you don't have to translate everything in your head.
which makes speaking and understanding much faster and more natural.
It's like switching from driving a car with a manual transmission to driving an automatic.
The process becomes smoother, more intuitive, and less mentally taxing.
Wow, that is a brilliant analogy.
It really captures the essence of what it feels like to think in English.
But how do we get there?
It seems like such a daunting task, almost like rewiring our brains.
It appears that the key is to gradually immerse yourself in the language.
Surrounding yourself with English as much as possible,
Start by incorporating simple activities into your daily routine.
like naming objects around you in English,
Reading short articles or stories.
or listening to English music or podcasts.
That is a great starting point.
It's like sprinkling English seeds throughout your day.
Allowing them to take root and blossom into a garden of fluency.
Exactly. And as you become more comfortable with these basic activities,
You can gradually increase the complexity.
engaging in conversations with native speakers, watching English movies and TV shows,
And even trying to dream in English.
dreaming in English.
That sounds both amazing and a bit surreal.
It's like stepping into an alternate reality where language flows effortlessly.
And the barriers of translation melt away.
It is a powerful experience that can accelerate your language learning journey.
And deepen your connection to the language.
And remember, the more you practice thinking in English,
The more natural it will become.
it's like learning to ride a bike.
At first you might wobble and fall.
But with consistent practice, you will eventually be gliding along with ease and grace.
So we have talked about shifting our focus, embracing simplicity, speaking first and thinking later,
Practicing regularly, finding a conversation group, cultivating confidence.
and even venturing to the realm of thinking in English.
It has been a whirlwind of insights and strategies.
And I am feeling energized and inspired to put them all into practice.
It appears that by incorporating these techniques into our language learning journey,
We can transform our relationship with English.
moving from fear and hesitation to confidence and fluency,
It's like embarking on a grand adventure
exploring uncharted territories.
and discovering hidden treasures along the way.
And I think that is a perfect place to pause for now.
In the next part of our episode, we will delve into some fun and creative ways.
To incorporate English into your daily life,
From watching movies and TV shows,
to exploring the world of daily routines and sparking conversations with confidence.
we will also discuss how to order food in English like a pro.
Navigate social situations with ease.
And keep your motivation burning bright on your language learning journey.
So stay tuned, and we will see you in part 3. Welcome back to English Podcast Flow, where we are wrapping up our podcast on how to stop overthinking, start talking, and unlock your full potential as an English speaker.
That's right, we've covered a lot of ground, from shifting our mindset and embracing simplicity to practicing regularly and even daring to think in English.
Now it's time to explore some fun and engaging ways to integrate English into your daily life, turning it from a chore into a delightful adventure.
It appears that one of the most enjoyable and effective ways to immerse yourself in the language is to watch movies and TV shows in English.
It's like having a front row seat to a world of authentic language use, where you can observe natural conversations, absorb idiomatic expressions, and even pick up on cultural nuances.
Oh, I absolutely love watching movies and TV shows in English.
It's like opening a window into another culture, experiencing the humor, the drama, and the emotions through the lens of language.
It's so much more engaging than just reading a textbook or listening to a lecture.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that you're learning without even realizing it.
Your brain is passively absorbing the language, picking up on patterns, and expanding your vocabulary effortlessly.
It's like soaking up the sun's rays on a warm summer day.
You're not consciously trying to tan, but it happens naturally.
So what are some tips for making the most of this language learning goldmine?
It's like having a treasure map, but we need to know where to dig.
It appears that the key is to choose shows that align with your interests and language level.
If you're a beginner, start with shows that have simpler language and slower pacing, perhaps sitcoms or animated movies.
As your skills progress, you can graduate to more complex shows with richer vocabulary and faster dialogue.
That makes sense. It's like starting with a gentle hike on a well-marked trail before tackling a more challenging mountain climb.
You wouldn't want to overwhelm yourself with too much difficulty right out of the gate.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to use subtitles, especially when you are first starting out.
They can be a valuable tool for understanding unfamiliar words and phrases.
But try not to rely on them too heavily.
The goal is to train your ear to understand spoken English, not just to read along with the text.
Right, it's like using training wheels on a bicycle.
They provide support and stability while you're learning.
But eventually, you need to take them off and ride on your own.
And speaking of taking off the training wheels, try challenging yourself to watch short clips or scenes without subtitles, focusing on understanding the gist of the conversation, even if you don't catch every single word.
It's like listening to a song in a foreign language.
At first, you might only understand a few words here and there.
But with repeated listens, the meaning starts to emerge.
That's a great tip.
It's all about training our ears to tune into the rhythm and flow of the language, even when we don't understand every single element.
It's like appreciating a piece of abstract art.
You might not be able to decipher every brushstroke or color choice.
But you can still sense the overall mood and message.
Exactly. And remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Don't get discouraged if you don't understand everything perfectly right away.
Celebrate each small victory, acknowledge your growth, and be patient with yourself along the way.
That is such an important reminder.
It's a journey, not a destination, and the joy is in the process.
The constant discovery and expansion of our linguistic horizons.
It appears that another fun and effective way to integrate English into your daily life is to talk about your hobbies and interests in English.
It's like giving a voice to your passions, expressing yourself in a new language, and connecting with others who share your enthusiasm.
Oh, I love talking about my hobbies in English.
It's a chance to use vocabulary that's relevant to my interests, to share my knowledge and experiences, and to learn from others who have similar passions.
It's like joining a club or a group where everyone speaks the same language, both literally and figuratively.
Exactly, and it doesn't matter what your hobby is, whether it's cooking, gardening, playing sports, or collecting stamps. There's always something to talk about in English.
You can describe your favorite techniques, share tips and tricks, discuss current trends, and even debate the merits of different approaches.
It's like having an endless supply of conversation starters, all centered around something you already love.
And the beauty of it is that you are not just practicing your English skills.
You're also deepening your understanding of your hobby, learning new vocabulary, and expanding your knowledge base.
It's like taking a 2-for-1 deal.
You get to improve your language skills while also pursuing something you are passionate about.
It appears that one way to make talking about your hobbies in English even more engaging is to join a club or group where English is the primary language of communication.
This could be a local club, an online forum, or even a group of friends who are also learning English.
The key is to find a supportive and encouraging environment where you can practice your speaking skills without fear of judgment.
That's a great idea.
It's like having a built-in audience for your English practice, a group of people who are genuinely interested in what you have to say and who are there to support you on your language learning journey.
Exactly, and by interacting with others who share your interests, you are not only practicing your language skills, you are also building relationships, expanding your social circle, and creating meaningful connections.
It's a win-win situation all around.
So we've talked about watching movies and TV shows, discussing our hobbies, and finding a supportive community of English speakers.
But what about those everyday situations where we need to use English? Like ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or making small talk with strangers?
It appears that navigating these real-life situations can feel daunting at first, especially if you're not confident in your English skills.
But remember, the key is to start small, focus on clear communication, and not be afraid to ask for clarification if you need it.
Right. It's all about breaking down those seemingly overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
It's like learning to cook a complex dish. You don't try to master every technique at once.
You start with the basics, building your skills gradually.
Exactly. For example, when ordering food at a restaurant, you can start by learning a few key phrases.
Like, I'd like to order,
Can I see the menu, please?
and I'll have the...
You can even practice these phrases at home before you go to the restaurant so you feel more confident and prepared.
That's a great tip.
It's like rehearsing for a play.
The more you practice your lines, the more natural and comfortable you will feel when it's time to perform.
And when asking for directions, be specific about your destination.
Use landmarks if possible, and don't hesitate to ask the person to repeat or clarify if you don't understand.
It's like following a recipe.
You need to pay attention to each instruction, measure the ingredients carefully, and adjust the heat as needed to achieve the desired result.
That's a great analogy.
It reminds us that communication is a two-way street. We need to be both clear in our own expression and attentive to the responses we receive.
And when it comes to making small talk with strangers, remember that most people are happy to chat, especially if you approach them with a friendly smile and a genuine interest in what they have to say.
You can start by commenting on the weather, asking a simple question, or complimenting something they're wearing.
It's like throwing a ball back and forth.
You keep the conversation flowing by responding to each other's cues and adding your own unique spin.
So we have covered a lot of ground today, from watching movies and TV shows to talking about our hobbies, navigating everyday situations, and even mastering the art of small talk.
It's been a whirlwind of insights and strategies, and I am feeling energized and inspired to put them all into practice.
It appears that by embracing these techniques and incorporating English into our daily lives, we can transform our relationship with the language, moving from fear and hesitation to confidence and fluency.
It's like planting a seed, nurturing it with care, and watching it blossom into a beautiful and fruitful tree.
And remember, the journey of language learning is an ongoing adventure full of discoveries, challenges, and rewards.
Embrace the process, celebrate your progress, and never stop exploring the vast and wonderful world of English.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of English Podcast Flow.
We hope you found it helpful and inspiring.
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow and reach more English learners like you. By subscribing, you'll never miss a new episode, and by liking the video, you're letting us know you want more helpful content. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us.